Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when Carney buys your house from you? Oh, baby, big news drop in Brookfield Asset Management. Carney's, who was the former chair of that business for the past 5 years, who tells us he severed his ties. He doesn't work with them anymore. He's solely focused on the needs of Canada. Well, that management company just bought more single-family homes in the States. Oh, baby. It's getting wild in here. The own nothing and be happy is getting more real and real by the days we get closer to year 2030. And it's more fun because it's more evidence to show to people that, oh, yes, this Davos group, this World Economic Forum, this whole group that Carney's a part of, like, it all kind of comes together. You know, the party that claims to be against the billionaires, for the people, for the sake of Canada, are the same people who are outwardly, with their full chest like Elon Musk, supporting a billionaire like Mark Carney. Mark Carney and Elon Musk do have one thing in common, because Mark Carney gives his heart to the billionaires. Sorry, I had to. What a wild time the past couple days. Oh, baby. But yes, let's get into the story, shall we? Brookfield nears $950 million purchase of Divvy Homes. Brookfield Asset Management is nearing a deal to buy 3,800 single-family rentals for about $950 million through an acquisition of startup Divvy Homes, according to a person familiar with the matter. About 65% of the homes are in markets such as Atlanta, Dallas, and Tampa, according to the person who asked not to be identified discussing a private matter. After the acquisition, though, Brookfield's Maymont Homes will oversee about 20,000 properties. Quite a bit. Brookfield's global real estate portfolio includes apartments, warehouses, offices, other property types. In 2020, the firm acquired a controlling stake in a single-family landlord, Conrex, and raised $300 million for a vehicle to acquire houses, Bloomberg News reported at the time. Brookfield has been bolstering its residential business. Last year, a Brookfield Asset Management fund snapped up $893 million portfolio of student housing properties at schools including Texas A&M University. These guys are on fire. Buying up all the single family homes, buying up student homes. They're not even the biggest acquirers. You have Blackstone, BlackRock, JP Morgan, and others who are all snapping up residential homes like it's going out of style. It is just funny knowing that a man who is claiming to look after middle class Canada, look forward to getting the economy back on track, person who claimed to take credit for the 2008 crisis as the head of the Bank of Canada, even though it was mainly policy that really helped us. So shout out Harper. He's the guy, the billionaire who hangs out with the billionaires, who claims to be fighting for the people, just left a company that acquired and has been acquiring single family residential homes in the United States. You know, the left loves him so much at this point, right? Liberals are snapping him up, thinking he's so great. You know what? I'll tell you this. It keeps up at this rate, you'll get all the Carney you could ever ask for because he'll be your landlord and also your daddy. But that is kind of the concern that's been coming up. This news came up huge in 2020. We saw these huge corporations buying up swaths of homes in the United States. According to data reported by PEW Trust and originally gathered by CoreLogic as of 2022, investment companies take up about a quarter of the single-family home market. Specifically, investor purchases accounted for 22% of all American homes in 2022. This number slightly decreased from last year, 2021, which sat at 24%, with over 90,000 homes in the third quarter alone. Over the last decade, the number of investors in purchasing homes has increased from 10% to 15% each year. Except for 2020 to 2021. That was the caveat, okay? That one was just a nice little light, dainty increase of over 80%. In 2021, according to a study by Redfin, saw an increase of over 80% of these companies acquiring these homes. That's why it made such a big splash in 2020. So yes, investment in residential real estate companies are purchasing more and more American homes each year. It's becoming a very huge issue down there. It was something that really picked up in 2009 after the 2008 crash, and then it was slowly building up over time. And then 2020 saw it take off again with another huge economic issue with the pandemic. And companies like Brookfield Asset Management have been joining in on the fun, who was chaired by Mark Carney, who I'm sure loved the idea. It was probably his idea, an idea he's been championing from the World Economic Forum, where we use our policy, we get involved in government, institute policies that make people go broke, lose their homes, and then we go and buy it all up. It's not a conspiracy theory anymore. We have the stats and data to show it at this point, that all of a sudden, big, awful things happen to middle-class families, and then the corporations just come in right away and pick it all up. Very interesting. And really more interesting that Mark Carney was involved with it. But not anymore. He stepped away. He stepped away from all his positions in the private sector just to take over and help out with Canada. So the question here lies remains, we looked at numbers that are happening in the States. We had Brookfield, who has been acquiring houses in the States. So how does that impact Canada? Is that same thing happening here? Well, here's the problem, is we don't really know. We don't really have any transparent studies that have taken place on this. We don't really have any transparent data on the issue. We just have kind of figments of ideas of getting a closer clue of what could be happening. You know, the question was posed, is corporate buying the root cause of Canada's housing crisis? And the concept of financialization refers to treating housing as an asset class rather than a necessity. While this trend is evident in Canada, corporate investors represent a small fraction of property owners compared to individual investors. For example, Stats Canada reports that 29% of residences in BC, 41% in Nova Scotia, and 31% in Ontario are owned by individuals with more than one property. These figures likely include mom and pop landlords as well as larger investors. Corporate ownership, by comparison, is relatively small and geographically concentrated. So we don't really fully know. We just know that corporations are in the market. They are purchasing a little bit more, but we don't know what that amount is. We don't know how much they're taking up and how much from the inventory they're taking. Because when you start looking at these numbers, that 29% in British Columbia, that's a spooky number, 30%. But that also includes people like you and me who happen to, maybe they own their own home and then they own one additional. That's not full on corporations coming in with millions of dollars buying up swaths of single family homes. So we don't really know. But this is something we need to keep an eye on. A temperature check, you'd say. And we definitely shouldn't be giving a guy who's been benefiting off of this a chance to lead the country and dictate policy that can direct funds to his buddies. Can't happen, shouldn't happen. And people need to understand and know who this man really is. He's a snake. He's not the greatest guy. He's going to talk well. Reg said it best last Friday. Mark Carney is evil with a nice face. He's going to talk smooth, tell you what you want to hear, and then he's going to just funnel all of our tax dollars to all his buddies, like he already has been having an impact on with his Trudeau government. He's just been operating behind the scenes. When they put forward a new project or a new program for people to buy up heat pumps, and all of a sudden, I don't know, there's a company that Mark Carney owns that sells heat pumps. Weird. Okay. Odd. There's stuff that's kind of been happening. So when you see his former company buying up another set of homes, 3,800 to be exact, that will then likely turn into rentals, because they are acquiring them from another company who had a different business model that they're trying to hit. They're essentially acquiring their inventory and going to likely keep them as rentals where they can keep them as rentals. You know, and I hear the left, well, it's like, guys, it doesn't work for them anymore, so it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, so anybody I know who in business, anyone who I know who's built multi-million-dollar companies, and I know, lucky to know a handful of them, when they move on, they don't just disappear. Or people who go in and help a company grow to multi-million dollars or more, they don't just disappear. They don't just sever all ties with the company. They have a vested interest in them, likely through purchasing the stock or other monetary conduits. And I'm guessing Mark Carney has something very much the same. He likely has a very strong vested interest in Brookfield Asset Management. I imagine he owns some stock. He owns some other financial instruments with them to some degree behind the scenes somewhere. And that is something we need to figure out and find out. And we'll continue working on that. But don't forget, Bloomberg reported this January 16th, just over a week ago, that Carney leaves Brookfield for a political run, flat named chairman. They love this guy. Mark has been a tremendous partner to the firm since he joined nearly 5 years ago. 59-year-old Chief Executive Officer Bruce Flatt, who has been named board chair, said in a statement, also praised Carney's work leading Brookfield in the energy transition. Does that sound familiar? Carney, also 59, said at a press conference in Edmonton, Alberta, that he resigned all his corporate roles, including as chair of Bloomberg Inc., to focus on politics. His resignation means he's no longer the head of transition investing at Brookfield. Trying to cover the tracks, at least from the outside looking in, but we know, anyone who knows anything, there's a vested interest there. And when you are actively invested in a company that's buying up huge amounts of single-family homes, to the point where now almost a quarter of single-family homes in the States are now owned by corporations, you don't think he's going to try and make the same thing happen here? You'd be out of your dang mind, especially if he's in the position of prime minister. We've seen how much power Trudeau has had. If he gets in, there's no knowing what kind of policy he's going to introduce to drive more people to sell their homes, lose their homes, and essentially have to give it up to corporate interests. And as a fun little story to end it off, because this was hilarious yesterday, you've likely already seen this, but these liberals, They're savage. Chrystia Freeland will scrap capital gains tax hike if elected Liberal leader, source says. Liberal leadership contender Chrystia Freeland would scrap the federal government's capital gains inclusion rate hike if she were elected to replace Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, a source close to her tells CTV News. The policy shift would mark a major reversal for Freeland, who introduced the measure as finance minister in last April's federal budget. These people are nuts. Like, all the controversial policies they introduced, all of a sudden, they just had amnesia overnight and be like, yeah, no, bad idea. Terrible. We heard you. We heard you. It wasn't all the F Trudeau posters that, has been flying everywhere. The flags are flying everywhere. No, it's you guys that just, you guys made your voices heard. You don't want the inclusion. I thought this was supposed to tax the upper class. Guys like Mark Carney were supposed to be going after. I thought that was what that tax was supposed to be about. Of course not. You've inflated the asset price of homes in this country that when you sell them are definitely going to be well above $250,000. So more of the country is actually getting hit with this than you realize. Because when you make the economy so bad and people have to start selling this stuff off, then you're going to tax that. That's the issue. But again, this reversal on the carbon tax, this reversal on the capital gains tax is laughable. It's comical. They're almost conservative at this point. It's kind of crazy. But it just shows how disingenuous they are. Just shows how flaky they are and how much they will literally say anything to maintain their positions of power. They continue to lose credibility, especially when they were so staunch defending a lot of these policies over the years. All of a sudden, they're reversing on them. I know they think Canadians are stupid, but they're not that stupid. We're a very smart people. You guys are smart people. And I know you see right through this. I know right now, Carney's looking good. Freeland's struggling these days. But Carney gained huge endorsement for a good chunk of the former cabinet endorsing this guy. He claimed to be an outsider, yet he keeps getting all the endorsements of all the insiders. Plus his companies that he likely still has a vested interest in are buying up all the single family homes in the States. Yeah, seems like an outsider, right? Seems like an outsider, all right. Holy jumping. Well, that's a show. But as you know, I follow politics. I love covering politics here. But I have another love. I also love sports. And one show I really like is the Pat McAfee Show. The one thing I like about them is they talk sports, which is great, but they also like to take light jabs and have fun with pop culture, things that are going on. And I had to send you guys off on this video because it cracked me up. It was them talking to JJ Watt today about what name do you use for the Washington football team these days, if you're referring to them in the history. Here you go.
He said, I got drafted by the Washington Redskins. They were like, I don't know if you can say that on air. If you were drafted in 1995, what team do you say you were drafted by?
Well, we know how you would say it. We just found out. Harry McLaurin was actually drafted to that Washington team when they were known as the
Washington Redskins. That was the name of the team.
Jesus Christ.
Holy shit, that's a lie.
This show. Captain America.
How would you throw your heart if you had to throw it to a group of people?
Yeah. Not that way.
Maybe overhand throw.
What is the way you would do it? We talked about a few different styles. Cricket might have been the one. If he would have grabbed that and then just started doing it.
I like the frisbee. It's just I like the frisbee out. Like,
how would you throw your heart if you were to throw it at a group of people? Not that way. Gosh. I throw my heart to you, homies. We love you guys. Have yourselves a great one. I'm out.